far as my journey is concerned, it started about 34 years ago, in the sense that I've spent, before I came onto the bench, 20 years as a lawyer. Now, on 11th of this month, I completed about 14 years on the bench. To begin with, the journey was tough in a sense. It was steep. And why do I say that? It is because of the fact that I don't come from a family of lawyers and judges. My mother was an educationist. My father was working for a multinational company. Though members of my family were in bureaucracy, and they did well, but no one was in the profession. This profession is difficult to begin with for people who do not have roots in the fraternity. So that's the first hump, as they say, that you need to cross. So when I started, I thought I was reasonably well educated. I had a degree in law, I was a chartered accountant, but I found it difficult to find myself a placement. And I'm talking about an era where not many people were going to law. I mean, in the sense, law was not your first choice. I could have continued with chartered accountancy, but I didn't, because somewhere down the line I liked the legal facets of even accountancy. So I got interested in law. I wasn't looking at donning the auditor's robes, so to say. So then I discovered that it's not easy breaking in. The other day, when we were doing a webinar on something similar, I'd explained to my co-participants and others who were participating in that webinar that I actually went from law firm looking to find a placement. And then I realized that this is not happening. I was given some very, very sort of lovely alternatives, but I was not given a placement, which is when I decided to seek assistance of people who knew someone in the fraternity. And that's how I entered a law chamber. And interestingly, I entered a law chamber where the gentleman concerned at that time was himself not a senior advocate, but as time passed, he became one of the best, and today is the foremost lawyer in the country, none other than Mr. Salvi. So, but getting there firstly was tough. And when I did get there, at the point in time I did get there, he was himself, trying to reach the top. So in a sense, the senior was sort of working towards getting to his perch in life.
Right.
The junior was finding, trying to find his feet in the profession. So that was the scenario that we had. So, but then thereafter, once I think you get used to it, those struggles become easier, in a sense that you adapt to the situation and you do the best you can. So at that time there was no money, but there was a lot of work. Then of course the second stage comes where there is a little bit of money and work, and then the third and the fourth stage, which all of you know. There is the last stage is you'll have a lot of money, but I mean, you don't have to do too much of work. So, but before I could get to, let's say, the really cushy stage, I got invited to the bench, and I accepted the offer made to me. So that's how this 34 years have panned out. Well, insofar as the bar is concerned, the change is that certain things got, certain aspects have only got exacerbated. In a sense, there is more competition than there was earlier, and therefore, for most people, the pie has shrunk. It was always very small for people, as I said, who didn't come from entitled backgrounds.
Right.
So typically 90% of the work is with 10% of the lawyers, and 10% of the work is with 90% of those who are not from entitled background. So when you are vying for that small pie, there is a lot of struggle. And if you're an individual, the struggle is exponentially greater. In firms, the competition is different. If you manage to get into firms, firstly, getting into a firm is tough, unless, and that's the hard fact, unless you have a reference. Getting into a good firm is tough. But once you've gotten, then there is a different kind of struggle, I'm told. I was lucky to be loosely associated with the firm. Why do I say loosely associated? Because, as I said in the beginning, I had a problem getting into a chamber. When I got into a chamber, firms or solicitors who came to brief Mr. Salve recognized that there was perhaps some potential in this young man. And then I got my offers. So when I got my offers, I also negotiated my offers, which was that I was very clear I didn't want to lose on my freedom to practice the way I wanted. So I said, I will join you, but as an off counsel.
Right.
Which gave me the ability of, practicing as well as doing their work. Not that at that time I had a lot of work, but I had the space and the freedom to accept work. I wanted to keep that open for myself. At the same time, I this was self-imposed, call it pressure or whatever, which helped me to perhaps go faster, which is that I did not get into the mold of taking a monthly packet home. I said, I will do the work for the firm, and you will look at my analysis and then pay me according to what you think my work was worth it. So while I was associated with the firm, when I left Mr. Salve's chamber, I didn't sort of accept a salary. So there are different models that you adopt. This can be tough. Maybe I had the advantage of having at least home and hearth in Delhi. But if you are not a Delhi person, or if you are not from a city where you are working, then maybe this model may not work for you. It all depends how much money you can generate and whether the employer or your associate is willing to offer you these kind of terms of engagement. So that's how it was.
Competition is increasing more, and the need for money is increasing more. So how do you think we are going to balance this?
No, see, the point is there is competition, and I don't say because I don't see competition as something that can really be the reason of someone, having a degraded mental health, in a sense, his or her mental health getting affected. Not only because of competition, it's how you deal with competition. See, there's competition of various kinds. If it's healthy competition, then there is no problem.
Right.
It's undermining people, and your employers at times using that to sort of manage their human resources is what upsets the balance amongst those who work. If it is healthy, then there is no problem. It is only when that is used as a management tool when it becomes difficult for the employee, because the employee cannot call the shots. And these are private engagements. Hire and fire rule applies. People, when they get used to good salaries, take on obligations. You may have taken a loan for a car, house, children's education if you are married. And therefore, when this is used as a tool, it perhaps oppresses you mentally, something that you're not able to show, but you have to live with those kind of tactics, if you can call it. It's a little bit of a sharp word, but for want of a better expression. Yeah.
So as moral
I just want to revisit that little bit of a thing where you said that 90% of the people who come into the profession are not really from that entitled background. And the pressures that they face, they may not be from this city, they may have come from outside, probably not have gone to any of the top law schools. The thoughts on them, how should they sort of deal with the challenge?
So like when I say entitled background, I don't mean to say, or should not be understood as saying that a lawyer's son or a daughter cannot get into the profession, because it's true for doctors, true for engineers, true for architects. What I meant by that is they do necessarily get a head start. Correct?
Yes, this is true.
Now, it is like being in any sports.
Right.
The person who's in the inner circle is at the back, and those who are in the outer circles are. Now, that is done to, let's say, balance out where you are positioned in life. What happens in our profession is there is no such balancing out. In the sense, the one who's entitled, he stays ahead, and there is nothing to moderate the one who's not from an entitled background. So, the profession or the bar council or the bar associations, with the help of government, have to devise methodologies where these people are put at, if not the same, at somewhat similar place when they start out in the profession. You can give them monetary aid, you can find placements for them.
That was what
my
question
correct.
was. Their challenges might be a little different from somebody who has, someone already in the profession. So for someone who has no family background in the profession and still wants to grow.
So I can only take my example. Suppose there was a policy which the Bar Association had evolved, or a framework Bar Association or the Bar Council had evolved, that every firm will take X percentage from people who have no background or roots in the profession.
Right.
It would have given you an opportunity to have a look in a placement, and once you are there, then your work would speak for it.
Right.
Correct. Secondly, if firms want to grow, and that's my personal view, they should open up. In India, unfortunately, the best firms are family dominated. It is time that they opened up and genuinely offer, growth avenues to people who don't belong to the family. I know over the years, because there has been a struggle and people would move out, that some firms have evolved and they've offered equity. But I'm told that the equity is not, in a sense, substantial. And if it is not substantial, then is it really an equity participation? Is what I want to raise as a question. If it isn't, then does it really inure to the benefit of the lawyer community at large? In my view, it doesn't. Because people must realize that everyone has a shelf life. Even if it's a family or run firm, after a point in time, because of age, your contribution gets less uh, on a day-to-day basis, you actually should evolve into an advisory role,
Right.
where your equity should come down, and those who are the younger participants in the firm, their equity should increase. So while you can cultivate clients for the firm, you may not be involved in day-to-day working on matters. So there are various models that you could work around. There are some firms who are trying to do that, but I'm not too sure it is happening all around. So this is something that the profession, the bar associations and the council should look at. And actually, it's about evolving as a person as well. Those who run the firms should evolve and say that, what do I leave behind, for the profession? Your name is important, but that name or that firm will grow if you have fresh blood coming from outside, which is not necessarily family.
The mindset when we talk about families accepting someone else, the mindset needs to change, and I think it's very. It is going to take time. It's not that.
See, yeah, Bhumika, so it's not only true about law firms, it's also true about our biggest corporates. Just look around. But look to the West, or look to other countries and other jurisdictions, whether it is law firms or corporates. The ethos is different.
Yes.
They like to grow, and they grow because they infuse fresh blood, which has got nothing to do with the person who perhaps set up a law firm or a corporation. But here it is the other way around. Maybe it's us. See, the causes were around the issues concerning lack of opportunity, employability, and thereafter, lack of avenues of growth. See, after a particular point in time, even if you are in a good job or you have a good placement, I'm again coming back to a law firm scenario, you plateau because you're not growing. You're not growing because how much more can you earn? So, and insofar as earning is also concerned, it gets plateaued because it's not commensurate with the kind of work you are doing. And those issues, I think, at some stage weigh on you. So that is one. The other is also about the quantum of work. Some firms pay you fabulously well, they give you bonuses, they take you out on offshore trips. But these employees or these lawyers have different problems. Their problems is work-life balance. In this sort of race to get to the top from an associate level, say to the partner level, you lose out on a lot because you're expected to work long hours. You may get your bonuses, but if you have a family, that family suffers because you don't spend enough time with them. And then at some stage, especially if your spouse or members of your family also are not in the profession, they are not able to adapt to this environment, which is a 24/7 commitment. And with this gizmos that we have, we are constantly on call. Especially in India, we don't know how to switch off on a weekend. It is not acceptable. You're on constantly on email and WhatsApps and whatnot. So this is I think each individual has to think for himself what is best. There has to be some kind of a mental goal setting. What do I want to do in life? Where do I want to be? Are questions that each individual needs to ask himself. So as long as you know where you want to be, or as I say, why you are here, the how will work out itself. No, Bhumika, according to me, this is also cultural. Why I say so is because having been a judge in Madras, I've seen life there quite closely, and I've seen life in Delhi. A lot of people say that Delhi culture is the kind you describe, whereas in South it is different. There, even the richest man could be walking barefoot, and he could be wearing a dhuti and a vest, whatever. And he would step out of an ordinary car, and you would know that he packs billions in a day. Whereas up north, for whatever reason, life is more ostentatious. So that is one aspect. The other is, as I said, it's actually very individual centric. I mean, there are people who are understated, and there are people who are, they think the best thing is that the more you project, the more you get. So the problem is of projection.
Right.
But generally, all over the world, the problem is of projection. So an eloquent lawyer who speaks in clipped English is more acceptable than a person who's come from a government school or a municipal school, whose initial audience is difficult. But then again, it's judge centric. If you are before a judge who sits back and listens, you would soon realize it doesn't make a difference as long as you are making sense. As long as you are making sense, it doesn't matter how you deliver it. The best example that comes to my mind is Mr. G.R. Ramaswamy. He was a gentleman from the south. And when he came here, I don't know, Mr. Malik, whether you saw him in flesh and blood or not. Mr. G.R. Ramaswamy, the former attorney general. When he came here, he actually broke into a very niche circle of lawyers who came from backgrounds where English obviously was the spoken language.
Right.
Not that he didn't speak good English, but it wasn't as clipped as some of your other senior lawyers address arguments. But then he was so forceful, and there was so much of substance where legal arguments were concerned, that judges did start taking notice of Mr. Ramaswamy's arguments. Of course, he had an inimitable style of addressing arguments. I don't think anyone of you here have heard him, but he's legendary in his own way, in the kind of or the way he would carry himself in court and outside court. But he broke the mold, and so have the others. So while you are right that people or youngsters do get carried away by the fact that the bigger the car, the bigger the office, the more chances of me attracting a larger clientele. But that's not necessarily true. I'll tell you why. Because the fraternity knows, whether outsiders know or not, as to who is a competent lawyer and in what area. So like when you go to a doctor, people find out, as to, I have a little problem, where do I go? If the client is smart and if he researches, he ultimately comes to the right lawyer. He may get, in the first one or two cases, he may lose out, but if he's a litigant who consistently comes to court, he works it out. So I would tell people that you shouldn't worry about all this. Ultimately, your best advertiser is the fraternity or your client. If you do a good job, your client by word of mouth will tell 10 other people, and you ultimately get your views. So big car and big offices If they come by way of natural progression, there's no problem. I'm not saying that you should work hard and should get yourself big offices and big cars. But when you don't have the money and you go to a bank, take a loan and say, I need to start with a big office and a big car, that can be problematic, because if you don't have the work to sustain that kind of debt, you could go under. And especially these times where there is actually very little money outside, so you have to fight for your piece of the cake. That's how it is. Yeah, when I became a judge, maybe there wasn't so much of a discussion on social media. We had one or two articles in newsprint, newspapers. Over a period of time, it has increased substantially. So, and it was actually, it was not considered appropriate. And I'm talking of time even before I came onto the bench and when I was a lawyer and before my time, for lawyers to be actually discussing a matter which was in court. Judges didn't take very kindly to it. They said when the matter is in court, you can't be giving interviews outside court. But now, I think the laws have changed. It's now almost accepted by everyone that while the matter is in court, there are interviews given vis-a-vis the matter outside court, both by those who are in the matter and by those who are not in the matter. Right. Now, therefore, at times, what happens is remarks or observations made in court to elicit answers from lawyers get published and cause confusion, I would say, at times, and which actually is not good for the system, in the sense that while people are very eager to know what is happening, especially in matters of larger public interest, it at times puts even the lawyers in a very embarrassing position. I know of instances where lawyers have told me that because I made a particular submission that got reported and got misunderstood, and A or B was trolled thereafter. Now, that can be very difficult for a lawyer. So those are problems. Now, how does a person such as me deal with these issues? It's best not to be on social media. So I'm not on any social media. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. What I don't read doesn't hurt me. At the most, I get my morning newspaper. So if there is something said, it remains there. The sad part is, if something is reported which according to the judge, whoever it may be, is not accurate, he doesn't have an avenue of correcting it.
Right, absolutely.
He lives with it, and what people in the media should realize is that not only does it affect the judge, it at times affects the family, which is difficult to deal with. But then, since there is no avenue, you sort of just move on in life. But is that a happy situation? I don't think so. I think we need to find a more appropriate approach to these kind of situations. I'm all for freedom of speech, but moderation is good at times. Civility is very good, and something that I've propagated all along. But we are missing on moderation, we are missing on civility. And it is actually very true of electronic media. And of course, other platforms perhaps go even further. So no one has found actually a perfect solution for these problems. These problems are there.
Probably the purpose is sensationalizing the issue, and also I think what happens is also the context gets missed out. So when the reporting is happening, the when it is a lawyer is saying something and a judge is responding to, there is a certain context, but what probably is picked out is usually things which are merely the exchange is picked out without really taking the context into consideration, and that probably worsens the situation.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So, see, the point is, this is it has only become, in a sense, exponentially worse. But it wasn't as if it was not happening earlier. Like
Right.
Even newspapers, print media. All of us know that there are various categories of newspapers both in India and abroad.
Right.
So what we call yellow journalism. Even in so-called moderate and staid newspaper media houses, I was told, I read somewhere that there are employees whose only job is to ascertain as to what headline has to be put in the newspaper vis-a-vis a particular story. So the headline has to be such in the the buyer of the newspaper or whoever picks up the newspaper picks it up, his attention gets attracted. So sometimes, and most times, headline has nothing to do with the story in the headline, under it. So that's been happening. I mean, that's part of the game when you want to progress your business. But lately, it's actually affecting people negatively. The negative aspects of social media are something that we need to grapple with. And this constant need for people to scroll. See, since there is these social media platforms, now if you and I sit in a room, while you and I are talking, every 5 minutes you look at your phone, and that's a problem. We can't have a conversation. But for the fact that I'm being interviewed, perhaps if I was sitting on my desk, if I was not dictating, either your phone buzzes or whatever, you constantly keep looking at your phone. So you have to consciously keep away those devices, and so that you don't face the impact of such negativity. So that's how it is.